Welcome from the Authors Guild Foundation. Thanks for joining us for today's talk in our Business Boot Camps for Writers series, where we address a variety of career strategies for authors. Our guest today is Michelle Glogovac, author of How to Get on Podcasts, sharing her wisdom about exactly that. The Authors Guild Foundation is the charitable arm of the Authors Guild. The Guild provides member services like contract reviews and legal advice, website hosting, and more, and we advocate for authors' rights and free speech. If you're not a member, I strongly advise you to look into it, especially before the next time you sign a contract. The foundation exists to support and advocate for all authors publishing in the United States. With support from the National Endowment for the Arts and our donors, we're happy to provide educational events like this free to the public. Thanks for being here today, and thank you for the questions you submitted in advance. Those will inform the talk a bit, and feel free to use the Q&A box while we're live to enter any other questions you have. We'll have some time for that after Michelle's presentation. So yeah, Michelle's going to cover the fundamentals you want to know. Michelle Glogovac is the podcast matchmaker, a podcast publicist, author of How to Get on Podcasts, which came out last year, and host of the award-winning podcast My Simplified Life. She works with entrepreneurs, authors, and experts to hone their storytelling abilities, grow their businesses, and elevate themselves as thought leaders. She has a BA and MS in law and is the founder and CEO of the MLG Collective and California Moms for Good. Michelle, thank you so much for being here today. Looking forward to the presentation, and I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you, Johnny. I will start sharing my screen. Can we see that? Are we good?
That looks good.
Awesome. So we're going to talk about how to book podcasts today as an author. This is going to be a very packed presentation, but you will have access to everything. There's going to be a free resource at the end that will kind of give you more of this. And then everything is also in my book, How to Get on Podcasts, which I'll share with you later as well. As Johnny said, I am Michelle Glogovac, a podcast publicist, a podcast host of the Webby nominated, as of this week, My Simplified Life podcast, author of How to Get on Podcasts. I have a former corporate aviation career where I sold jet fuel to corporate flight departments for 18 years. And yes, I know corporate aviation, podcasts, how do they even relate? It's all about relationships. Everything is relationship based. I sold jet fuel not because of the gas, but because of the relationships that I had, and that's how I was successful. I pitch clients to podcasts and listen to the shows before even pitching to them, as well as getting to know my clients, and that's how I build those relationships and have found success on that side. I also have my BA and my MS in law because I thought I was going to be an attorney since the age of 5. I'm not. I have 2 kids who are a year and 3 weeks apart and 2 adult stepkids, and my husband works from home with me. So we obviously like each other a lot. We're not just husband, wife, but we're friends. Let's talk about podcasts. There are over 4 million podcasts, and they are growing every single day. I love podcasts because you get to eavesdrop in on an intimate conversation. I am someone who you will find at the coffee shop listening in on what the conversations are around me because I just want to be nosy and hear about it. Podcasts allow us to do that, and it's okay to do that. They have an established audience. So a lot of times I get questions on starting your own show versus being a guest on one. And when you start your own show, you need to be consistent in showing up, in producing content, and you also have to grow an audience from none. Whereas when you're a guest on a podcast, you are speaking to a warm audience that already trusts the host. The host has already put in all of that work, that time, that effort to create an audience, and they're giving you access to that, which then creates warm leads because people who listen to podcasts trust the host. That's why they keep showing up every week to listen. And that trust is then extended to you as the guest. Let's give some background on podcasts because I think it's really important to know that they've been around for over 20 years. I did not know how to listen to a podcast until 2018. I didn't know that the purple button on my iPhone allowed me access to podcasts that were free. Apple Podcasts launched in 2005, Google Podcasts 2018, and then that's, of course, come out around YouTube and whatnot. Spotify's been around since 2019. And then during COVID, we saw a record of 1 million podcast be launched. Everyone was at home wondering, what can I do with all this free time besides binging my Netflix shows? And they started launching podcasts. I just updated all of these stats yesterday because the last time I gave this presentation, it was even fewer people who were listening. Now, over 67% of Americans who are 12 and older have listened to a podcast, 55% of them in the last month. And I think it's really unique to notice that it's people 12 years and older. We have a fifth grade class at school that my kids go to. And part of their homework is that one night a week, instead of reading, they have to listen to a podcast of their choice. Then they share what podcast it was, what they learned from it. And so it's becoming even more and more popular with this younger generation. There are over 584 million podcast listeners globally. So that's the other unique thing about podcasts is that here you can be from your home recording an interview and you are reaching people around the world. That's something that unless you are hopping on a plane to do a big book tour, you won't be able to do. It is reaching people all over the place. And that's a really neat thing to do, especially as an author. I find that podcasts are really meaningful because they allow us to learn something, they allow us to be entertained, they build empathy, they do a lot of things. And when we talk about podcasts and the types of podcasts that there's literally a different show on anything and everything. Whether you want to hear comedy and be entertained, or you want to hear the backstory of an actor or a singer, you want to meet an author, there is literally a show for everyone on every topic. You can build your business, you can figure out how to launch a book, you can do all of these things. And so that's the beauty of a podcast. When it comes to authors, what I love about podcasts, what I do for my show, is that we don't simply talk about the book. We talk about the author because I'm interviewing the author, not the book. I want to learn everything there is about you, the human being who has written these beautiful words, who has educated us, who has made us feel and cry and do all of these things within your book. A podcast allows us to get to know you. It allows you to become that celebrity that we recognize, that we want to learn more about. And I truly feel that if we get to know you as a human being and kind of fall in love with you, we're going to want to read the books that you are writing. So these are all benefits of why you should want to be on podcasts. They focus on you as the expert. It is free publicity. And I know there was a question about paying for podcast interviews, and I completely disagree with that. Do not pay for a podcast interview. That is an advertisement, a commercial. Earned media, which is also PR, and that is what podcast PR is free. The way that you are going to quote unquote pay for it is that you're going to share the episode, but you're also going to show up and share of yourself. You're going to give as much information as you can to help the audience in some way. So do not pay for an episode, an interview. I have seen hosts ask for anywhere from $25 up to $10,000 to be on their show. $25 is silly because as a host, it costs more than $25 an episode to produce one. You have the cost of the host, which is different than the podcast host. It's what you actually upload all of your episodes to, which distributes it to the podcasting platform. That has a monthly fee. You're creating graphics. You might have an editor. So $25 does not pay for it. And it's kind of silly money. $10,000 means that host is making a ton of money off of what you are providing to their audience. So do not pay for it. Paying for it would mean that you should be able to show up, say whatever you want, sell whatever you want. And that's what you see on a commercial for TV. So do not pay for it. As I said before, you're getting a warm, established audience. They've already brought that trust to the host, and that trust is extended to you. Podcasts are searchable on multiple platforms. You might be thinking about podcasts as listening, and that's the only thing, and yet they're not. They're all of the listening platforms, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, all of these places, but they're also social media. There is websites, there's Pinterest, there's a bunch of other platforms that when you start your Google search, they all come up. So it's going to be a much bigger, broader audience that you can reach than simply thinking about podcasts as listening. There's also the promotion of the interview. So I promote every episode that I have as a host, but I also promote every episode where I'm the guest. In addition to the host promoting it, if you have a publicist, the publicist hopefully is also promoting it. Then you see, friends, family, people who follow you, they'll promote it. And that's the beauty of it. It's that ripple effect of you threw it into the pond and now the rock continues to grow. Uh, One of the other things is that it is a way of saying thank you. And I'm going to get to that in a little bit on how this is what you should be doing, the tips and tools of how to promote this without feeling salesy. I do get clients who say, but I don't want to promote myself. I don't want to say, look at me, look at me. This is not a form of saying, look at me. This is a way for you to show people the knowledge that you have. You don't know who is following you. I oftentimes will have someone, I had an author that I interviewed the other day who was complimenting me on my social media, and I didn't know that she was watching. You never know who is watching you. And if you allow them to see that you've been interviewed on a show where you share your knowledge, you share part of your story, then that allows them to go and get to know you even more so. If you're giving them knowledge that they wouldn't otherwise have, then this is a benefit to the audience and not just to you. This isn't a self promotion type of thing. And in addition to that, you're promoting the host who has put in that time, that effort, that money to have a show and to bring you on as their guest. Now let's talk about how you are going to pitch yourself. These are some must haves before you go into pitching yourself. You should have a website. It doesn't have to be something fancy or big. It can literally be one landing page that shows who you are, what your book is, just something that allows people to go to see that you are who you say you are. Have a social media account. You don't have to be everywhere. You pick the one that feels best to you, the one that you think that the most of your readers are going to be on, and utilize it. Show up, be consistent there. You should have a headshot. You're going to need that for your book anyway, but you're also going to be sending out your headshot when you book interviews because the host is going to use it for all of their graphics. You should have a bio. I have a short bio and a long bio. I'm going to show you all of these here shortly. And then speaking topics. We're going to get into that as well, but you should have these before you even pitch. And then have a call to action. Have something that you can give away at the end of the episode. So every interview, you will be asked, I promise you, where can people find you? And that is your opportunity to promote whatever it is that you're promoting, to share where your book can be purchased, to share where it is that someone can get a chapter to look at. Maybe you have a download, maybe you have book club questions, something that will also allow you to capture their email addresses. This is a way, if they're giving you their email address, they want to stay in touch with you. So have something of value to give to them so that they will give to you, and then they can keep in touch to find out when your book does launch, if it hasn't launched yet, where they can buy it, where they can buy the next book, and so on. All of this will get housed in your media kit, which we're also going to look at in just a minute. And so the media kit is going to be something that's attached to your pitch as well. I'll share that with you. A nice to have, it's not a requirement, but I like to have a digital copy of the book. I, as a host, read every book of every author I interview, cover to cover. There's no skimming. I read it. So therefore, when I get pitched an author, I ask for a copy of the book. Hardcover physical is great, but digital works for me as well because I want to be able to dive in and see, is this something that I'm interested in? Do I want to learn more about this author? So if you can, have that ready. I understand that you might be building your author brand and you don't have your book ready yet. That's fine too. But if you're going to have somewhere in your pitch that this is about your book, that you have this book coming out, then be ready to offer a digital copy of your book to the host that you're pitching to. Your speaking topics. Podcasters love to see what you can speak on, and you want to get very unique because sometimes they will use the title of your topic as the title of the podcast episode. So you're going to think about, what are you an expert on? Create 3 to 6 topics. I'm going to get into that in the next slide too. You're going to create 3 to 6. I always aim for 6. And then within the pitch, you're going to select the ones that most resonate with the podcast that you are pitching to. So you're never pitching all 6 of your podcast, your speaking topics at one time. You should find the ones that are most applicable, the ones that have not been covered by that podcast before, and put those in. And you're going to let the host know why this is the topic that you think would best resonate with their audience and whatnot, which we'll also get into. They can be long. You can include a subtitle. So don't be afraid to get wordy on it, get specific, and I'll share all of that with you here too. Topic types. So throughout my book, How to Get on Podcasts, I share different types of topics. And throughout, you will ask yourself questions. So it kind of makes you think even more about what your journey has been. What is it that you can speak on? What makes you unique? Because I know that each and every one of us, myself included, says, what can I speak on? Like, who wants to hear me talk? Well, there's a lot that we can speak on because nobody is like us. We are each unique. And so we have topics that we can speak on that other people can't. Or we speak on a topic that someone else can, but in a unique way. So, some different types of topics I've laid out here are your book. What is the story behind your book? One of my favorite questions to ask an author is what parts of you are actually in the book? There, when I interviewed Genevieve Wheeler, who wrote Adelaide, she shared with me that all of the tattoos of her main character are tattoos that she has, and they're all from books that she's read and fallen in love with. So I thought that was very unique. That's something that you can share. You know, how did you come up with the book that you're writing? Why is it important to you that you wrote it? How long did it take you? What is your personal story? What have you done that you've overcome that you want to share? What's that personal journey looked like? Did you come right out of high school and you wrote a book and that was it and your career took off? Chances are no. So, what is it that you've done along the way? What's your business story been? I shared with you at the beginning that I wanted to be an attorney when I was 5, and then I majored in law. Well, then I had to get a job in college, and I walked to the airport because I didn't have a car. And that's how I launched an 18-year career. I was then laid off twice, and I had 2 little kids and wanted to do something that I felt bettered their future in the world. And that's when I discovered podcasts. So sharing those kinds of stories, people want to hear. They want to be inspired to say, oh, you had a lot of pivots along the way. I love to hear those journeys. Human beings love the stories of other human beings. So share those stories. What's the knowledge that you can share? Whether it is a method or a framework, skills, it can be on writing, it can be on something else. It could be on how you're promoting your book. It can be on if you have a nonfiction book, you know, what is it about the book that you can share that people don't know? I have had to share my framework of this. This is exactly what my book is on, and creating this framework, this method of how do I come up with speaking topics? How do I pitch a podcast? How do I search for them? And so that is something that I speak on. Is there something that's timely and relevant? You can tie it to the news. So you can always update your topics, your media kit. Nothing has to be concrete, set in stone, a one and done. Go with the flow. You know, what is it that is going on in the news that is relevant to what you speak on? Absolutely pitch that. That can be a topic. And I'll share with you my media kit. So there can be it's just a one page. I also do an author media kit, and I'll share with you what mine looks like as well. It's longer because it encompasses the book as well. The goal is to make it look branded. It should look just like it came off of your website. So all of my colors, the fonts, these are all things that you will see on my website as well. I use Canva to create this, and then I download it into a PDF. And within the PDF, every one of these little icons are clickable. They all link back to my Instagram, to Facebook, to my Spotify playlist and whatnot. All of these features down here link back to the actual interviews. You see that my name is there, my headshot, my short bio. I've got the book cover you can't see. It is right there. My social media and website links are all there. My speaking topics, previous podcast links, and media features as well. And you can see some of my topics. I talk about family life, and being an entrepreneur. I launched my business when I had my two young kids at home too. They were 2 and 3 years old, so not going to school yet. And then COVID hit, so they were Zoom schooling. I talk about my book, How to Get on Podcasts. I talk about finding your purpose because I really felt like this is what my purpose was and how much I love doing this. I talk about how to launch your book and using podcasts. I talk about saying no. I had a pulmonary embolism years ago and how that changed how I say no to things and to lean more into what aligns with me in my life. I'm also now talking more about how you can show up in your business and talk politics right now and how they align together. So that's a newer topic. I also discuss podcast PR versus traditional PR. And I work on, what is the differences when it comes to the pitch, the length of the pitch, what comes across as the follow-up, how quickly do you follow up on traditional PR versus podcast PR, why is it that there's a different time in the follow-up length, all of those things. So these are all topics that I can speak on that I know because of what I've done. This is my author media kit. So it's still the same first page. The next page is just a different headshot with my name. Then I have one with a longer bio. And then I have 3 more pages that are all around my book. So the topics of my book, quick facts about the book, the ISBN number, how much is it, where can you purchase it? And then I have the blurbs that the book has received as well. You don't have to include any and all of this. It's completely, there's no right or wrong. But if you have a book coming out, then this is a great thing to also provide to the host so they can get an overview of what the book is about. How to research the podcast. So there's a lot of ways that you can do this for free. I do have a subscription to Podchaser for my business because we are searching podcasts every single day. And it's expensive, but since it's my business, that makes sense for me. You can search on Apple Podcasts, search on Google, search on Spotify, Listen Notes, and Podchaser has a free version as well. Use keywords for the type of podcast you want to find. I love that on Apple Podcasts, once you find a show that you think is a good fit, scroll to the bottom and there's the shows that are similar to this one that you might like, and you can then go down the rabbit hole. You can also go onto Instagram and search hashtags. Every podcast, for the most part, I would say a huge percentage, they are using Instagram to promote their episodes. So they're putting in hashtags and they usually align with the show, the episode that they're putting out there. So maybe it's a career podcast, podcast for women, mom podcasts, author podcasts, book podcasts. Look those up and then go check out the posts that they're doing. Was it something that was recent? This is also a great way for you to interact with that host as you're about to pitch them, research them, because you want to get to know the host as much as possible in order to really personalize the pitch that you're going to send them. I also recommend that you use the Instagram bio to find the email address for the host of the show. You can sometimes find it on the website. Podchaser has them. You can Google the host. But if you go to an Instagram bio, there is a button that says either contact or email. It is okay to use that email address that they provide. There's a reason that the person puts it out there. It is for you to use. If they didn't want you to have their email address, then they would not put it there in their Instagram bio. But feel free to find their contact information that way. Let's talk about the types of podcasts that you're reaching out to. I know there was a question on should you only go to book podcasts or literary podcasts? My question to you is, who is your ideal reader? Are you only talking to people in the literary world? If yes, then absolutely find literary podcasts. If no, where are your ideal readers listening to podcasts? Do you have a beach read? Well, who is reading beach reads? Is it the mom who's on summer vacation? Is it the younger audience? What kind of podcasts are they listening to? Because those are the ones that you want to get on. You don't want to only talk to a bunch of authors because are the authors all going to be your ideal reader who wants to read your book? Most likely not. So it's more important to find the shows that your ideal reader is listening to and showing up at. Where are they hanging out? And you can also get a sense of that from looking at the Instagram following. Look at the podcast description. When you go to Apple Podcasts, there's a description on what the show is about. Read it. Take a moment to really read it and consider who is it that they're trying to target. It will let you know what the show is about, and you can get a sense of who's listening to this show. If you do have a subscription to Podchaser, then they will give you all of those demographics. They will tell you the gender, the age range, the education range, the salary range. All of that information is in Podchaser. But in order to really find out who is it that you are talking to or want to talk to, simply start reading the description of the shows and check out who the host is and what it is that they're trying to target. Does size matter? This was a question that came up, and I'm saying no, size does not matter because it is much more important that you are talking to the right audience. I tell clients I would prefer to put you on a show with 250 listeners, and every single one of those 250 people wants to hear what you have to say. They want to buy your book, they want to get to know you, versus a million listeners who have no idea who you are. They don't want to know. They don't care. They don't read. They have no interest in books or the topic that you are discussing. So it's much more beneficial because you could sell 250 books on a show that has 250 listeners who want to hear from you versus selling nothing on a show that has a million listeners and yet none of them are interested. So who the audience matters much more than how much of the audience. Like I said before, look at the podcast description, their episodes, to see who is it they're targeting. If you want to look at size, look at a whole rounded picture. Look at the number of Apple reviews. Look at the Instagram followers as well as the engagement. Go and peruse their feed. You know, do they have 100,000 followers and yet they get 2 likes on a post? Something's off. Look at the number of Spotify reviews. You can now leave 5 stars on Spotify. It's not as popular as Apple Podcast reviews have been, but they're still there. And the reason I say look at all of these things is because you can buy Instagram followers. You can also buy Apple reviews. So just because something has a lot of reviews doesn't necessarily mean it has a lot of downloads. Downloads are not something that is readily available to everyone. Podchaser does give you that with the paid subscription. I sound like a Podchaser advertisement, but it's something that does come with their subscription. It is not something that I recommend you ask. Do not ask a host as you're pitching yourself, how many downloads do you get? That is one of those big no-nos because it's not something that's readily available. And it's something that only a advertiser would really ask because they are giving money and there's a financial benefit and relationship there. So you can't really find out the downloads without paying for such a subscription. And you really want to focus on who the audience is first and foremost. Crafting your podcast email. So there is a part that I call the skeleton pitch, and this is going to have some sentences about you, your bio. That's not going to change. You are who you are. Your speaking topics, you're going to swap out with every single pitch that you send. But everything else is going to be unique and personalized to the host, to the show that you're pitching. You're going to use a lot of hyperlinks, and I'm going to show you an example in just a minute as well. And you want to first do your due diligence. Go listen to an episode or two, something that really interests you, resonates with you. You can listen to it at a 2x speed. You don't have to listen to, a 1x speed and really endure such a long thing because this is time consuming, but it is so important. I recommend you don't listen to the latest episode because that I feel it's a little lazy. Really scroll through the episodes and find one that you resonate with. You're going to let the host know why it resonated with you. What did you learn from it? What made it speak to you? So that they really know that you did listen. You have shown up for them and you're not just simply copying and pasting, throwing spaghetti on the wall. Let them know who you are. This is the mini bio part of you. Why is it that you are the person to really share this knowledge? Why should they interview you and extend the trust and their audience to you versus somebody else? Embed links to everything, hyperlink. If you make them leave your email to go Google you, then you have done a bad job. They should be able to click on your name, they should be able to click on your book and take them right to wherever it is you want to direct them. I create Spotify playlists for all of my clients so that all of their interviews are housed in one spot. We link to that in the pitch email as well, so they can see this is where this person has been interviewed in the past. And then you should have your speaking topics, do 2 or 3. And why is it that these are the most important? Make sure they haven't been covered before. If they have, what's your twist on it? What is it that is different from what has already been said? And then follow up in 2 to 3 weeks. So as I mentioned before, traditional PR is a much quicker follow up. It's 24 hours or so. It's more breaking news. You're in newsrooms, that kind of a thing. Podcast hosts have outside jobs for the most part. This is a hobby for some, it's a marketing tool, but the majority of hosts, myself included, we are working full time. And so the podcast pitches that I receive, they don't get my attention right away as a client email does. A client email is going to come into my inbox and I'm going to read that quickly versus a pitch will get pushed aside a little bit longer because it's not as urgent per se. So give podcast hosts the benefit of the doubt and allow them 2 to 3 weeks because they're also going to vet you. They're going to go and look at your website. They might want to look at, the book that you have coming out. If they request your book to read, then give them time to read it as well. I'm always very upfront with any author or publicist that is representing an author of saying, I would like to interview this person, but I want to read the book first. And after you send me the book, give me a little bit of time. I try to do my best in letting them know what order they're in. If I'm reading a book for a client, or if I'm already reading a book that has to do with another interview that I have coming up. So I'm sliding people in as best that I can, but that takes time as well. So I know that there was also another question on, when should you start pitching if you have a book launch coming out? And I always tell clients 3 to 4 months in advance. That way, people can read the book. If you have a publicist, the publicist can read your book. And then you can then pitch yourself. You can then calendar the interview bookings. So there's no rhyme or reason on when that interview will A, be recorded, and B, be launched. So give yourself at least 3 to 4 months before your book comes out. There can be podcast hosts who have an opening next week. There can be podcast hosts who aren't open until August or even next year. And then once you record it, it could go live next week. It could go live in a month or 2. You can always ask if it's possible to have your interview go live during the week of your book launch. I always look at that when I interview an author to try to make sure that it does go live during their launch week. But that's not always possible. But you can always ask if it is possible. I know there was also a question about backlists and, will a host interview an author whose book came out a year or 2 ago or more? Absolutely. As long as the book is still relevant and, you're still relevant, you're a human being, you have something to say, people want to learn more from you. So it doesn't really matter if your book came out 5 years ago or if it's coming out next year. It's always a good time to pitch yourself because you are growing your brand overall and it can sell a book. I always say a book sale is a book sale no matter when it happens. So if your book came out a while ago, mine came out over a year ago, it's still selling. So that's the beauty of being able to have podcast interviews that continue on and on. So here is an example of a pitch email that one of my team members sent out and that landed an interview. And I'm putting on the left is so you can see it. And on the right, you can see the actual pitch with all of the hyperlinks. Everything in blue is hyperlinked. So it's on the left side, it's underlined, but on the right side, you can see that it comes up in blue. And so we opened up with how we listened to an episode. What was the episode? what resonated with my teammate, and then introduce the client. This is why we think that she would be great for your show. This is who she is. Here are some of her topics. And then here's where she's been featured. And then we attach the media kit to it as well. If she was an author, we would attach information about the book. Sometimes we have permission to send out a PDF version of the book in advance. Other times we have to wait for a host to ask for it. So it all depends on who the client is. But this is an example of a pitch email that goes out. And also, when I go back to traditional PR versus podcast PR, podcast pitches are much longer than traditional PR pitches, because traditional is all based on the time. You want to get it's concise, it's quick, it's short, versus a podcast email. You want to have as much information as possible to get that yes quicker. The art of the follow-up. I already mentioned that you should wait 2 to 3 weeks because there are full-time jobs. This is not life and death. This is not something that is urgent. And reply to your original email. So go to your sent folder, find where that email pitch that you sent out, hit reply, because then all of the information that you have already sent to the host will already be there. They don't have to look at it and go, wait, you're following up on what pitch? This, that, like, I don't remember. And then they have to go search. You're giving them too much homework. But if you reply to your original email, then all of the information is already there. I say 2 follow-ups max, and don't try to be cute about it. Do not say, I'm just bumping this up to the top of your inbox. Obviously, I've had some very weird follow-ups, very weird pitches. I share them in the book because I actually have a folder that says bad pitches. Keep it brief, keep it kind, respectful. And I give you literally, this is all I say. I'm checking in to see if you had any questions about my topics or if I can provide you with further information. And then one last one, following up one last time. They know this is it. They don't have to unsubscribe to something. This is the only time I'm coming back into your inbox. And so there is, usually I get a response on that second or third follow-up because it is bumping it up. And like myself, I'm very guilty of this. I leave emails unread in my inbox. And so the follow-up does bump it up, as we all know, but it reminds me, oh, I did want to look at this, versus if I've already thrown it into, another folder and I'm not interested. Repurposing your podcast interviews. This is what is going to give you as much ROI, as they say, for your interviews. This is what is going to help your author brand. This is what's going to sell books. Repurposing your interview means that you are sharing it. You have 30 minutes usually on a podcast versus a 2-minute TV segment. And so 30 minutes gives you a lot of content to pull from. You can create blog posts, which are basically show notes. And it's, what are the topics that you spoke on? Can you write a paragraph on them? This is great for SEO. Put it on your website. You can create quote graphics, pull a transcript. I think that having a transcript, attaching that to your blog post is great. It allows for accessibility for people so that they can read it, or you can also embed the player onto your blog post. And so they can listen to it as well from your website. But pull a transcript and look at things that you've said. Was there a quote that really stood out? Take that and create a graphic for social media on it. And then share, oh, I said this on this podcast. I'm really grateful to tag the host, ask them to collaborate. They will do it because they want to bring as much attention and get those downloads to their show as you also do. Create a Spotify playlist. This is something really easy. I'm sure if you're on Spotify, you're creating playlists of music. Well, you can create one for your podcast interviews as well. You can create the cover art, which is really just a square, and then put, podcast interviews featuring your name, put that you're the author of a book. And then every time you have an interview go live, add it to that playlist. You can take that playlist and link it onto your website. You can put it in your LinkedIn bio. You can use it everywhere. And when you're updating it, it's a one and done because it updates across the board. Social media content. You should be putting those quote graphics and also putting a graphic with the cover art on your social media, Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest. That's one that's often forgotten. LinkedIn, X, formerly Twitter. We've got Threads. You can use TikTok. A lot of times, hosts will provide you with all of these assets, including I give out reels. So there's 30 to 60 seconds of the guest speaking with me, and it's got my cover art already in it. It's got captions in it, and I post it to TikTok and I tag them. Well, they can post it to TikTok too. So those can also be used as Instagram reels. They can be posted in all of these places. And when you tag the host, it is a way to say thank you to them and really give them the attention that they deserve as well. This is the free resource that I have. It's already on my website. It's been there, Booked and Bound. This has everything that I've talked about. It also gives you recommendations on my favorite microphones. I love the toner USB. All my clients get that. I personally use a Blue Yeti mic. I just ask that you use the mics properly. The Yeti mic, which is the pretty one you usually see in graphics, you speak into the side of it, not into the top of it like regular mics. So make sure you do that and don't tilt it. But it has everything that you need as a checklist. That's just a basic guide. Give you a moment. Authors Guild podcast is just a bit.ly link, and then we'll also send that out. And then how to get on podcast has all of that information. You are free to email me with more of your questions as well. I am on all of the places, all of the things. My podcast, My Simplified Life, also has episodes where I talk about your speaking topics, showing up for podcast book tours, all of these things. There's an episode for each and every one of them. There's more free resources on my website as well. And now Johnny, we can do some questions if you'd like.
All right. Thanks, Michelle. That was great. And yes, we will be emailing these things out. Also, that I noticed bit.ly links are case sensitive, so you'll get it. We'll get it to you. All right. So I think we covered stuff that a lot of people asked, but about the new releases and backlist books, it sounds like the podcast world just isn't as tied to release dates as traditional print media. Is that fair?
Yes. Yeah. I think as long as the book is interesting, they don't really go out of date. We can, look at the bestsellers list and we have books that are on there from decades ago. And as long as you have something great to say that's interesting that the host is going to want to talk about, then you should definitely be promoting yourself on a podcast.
A few specific things. Sorry if you covered these, but for the media kit, what's the best way to deliver that? Like, attachments aren't everyone's favorite. Should it be on your website and you link to it?
I have it on my website. That's part of my website is where you learn about me. You can see my Spotify playlist. You can there's links to my headshots. It's basically like a press page for myself that you can gain access to. And so I do have my media kit there. I attach them to all of my email pitches that go out. I haven't had anybody complain about it. We do also house them all in a Google Drive. So if somebody prefers a link, we can provide them with that. But I attach them as a PDF.
Okay. And for the digital copy of a book, is PDF normal or should it be an ebook?
PDF is totally normal. I usually get them in a PDF or a link to NetGalley or an ebook. Usually I'm asked, what's your preference? And as long as I can send it to my Kindle, then that's usually my preference. It doesn't matter to me. Mm-hmm. And I should mention also, there will be some hosts who don't want a digital copy. They want a physical copy. I have had hosts who say that they just can't read on a device, or some are saying, like I read too much of it on a device. I would like a physical copy. So keep that in mind as well, too, depending on who the host is. Accessibility is always something that you need to keep in the back of your mind.
Mm-hmm. Do you have tips for the subject line of your pitch emails?
I do it more for myself to keep it clean. I put the podcast name and then I put guest and then I put the client's name as the subject. I know that some will recommend that, you should have something catchy and eye-opening. And that's true for traditional PR because you want to get the journalist's attention. But I have found that in the podcast world, it's okay to simply put the name of the guest. It still gets read.
Mhm. Now, should authors, would you say authors can expect that a publicist will get better results, like better responses, doing it on behalf of the author?
Not necessarily. I think that it depends on the publicist, um, because a lot of traditional publicists don't know how to pitch podcasts. And this is whether we're talking about a big traditional publishing house. I've seen it. I've worked with publishers, um, because they're pitching the book. And so, like I said before, we're not interviewing the book, we're interviewing the author. So to just say that this book is coming out and this is what the book is about, unless it is something that we're like, wow, this is amazing, and I already know who the author is, that doesn't work. So you want to make sure that it is about you and not just about your book, because we're not interviewing the book. Um, a lot of this is really time based. This is a very time intensive effort to research the podcast, to personalize the pitches. And so that's why using a publicist is a nice to have if you can afford it, because they are taking on all of that work. But it's definitely something that you can do as long as you put in the effort to do it.
Mhm. Now, you said you do not recommend paying to appear on a podcast. That
Correct.
makes sense.
Don't pay for it.
But I think a lot of us might need to hear a little more about the podcast economy in general. How much is it monetized for the podcasters, or if they don't have ads, are they just covering the overhead? And like what's in it for them? What should authors know about why the podcaster does it in the first place?
So for the host to do it in the first place, it's either a passion project that they love, or they have figured out how to tie it into their business and it's a marketing tool. I use mine as a marketing tool. I don't have ads, so I cover the cost myself. Marketing tool wise, it connects me with authors. I love to read. So, having that connection with authors, having that relationship with publishers who might down the line utilize my business is really, part of it. Being able to share my knowledge of this is how you properly pitch a podcast. This is how you do it. I could promote my own book on my show. So that's why I use it. The majority of podcasts do not monetize their shows. They are paying for the overhead, which is why I emphasize how important it is to thank the host by repurposing your interviews and tagging them and sharing it. There are the big shows that are being paid to do it. The hosts, like the Midas Touch, Joe Rogan, Call Her Daddy. These are big shows that have big money behind them. But the regular shows like my own, we don't have a monetization there. There's some that might use Patreon. So, people who are listening can send $5 and say, hey, buy a cup of coffee, that kind of a thing. But for the most part, it's if you're a podcast host, utilize it as a marketing tool, figure out how to write it off on your taxes and do it that way. That's what they're doing.
Fiction writers are interested to know any tips about how they can produce speaking topics so they aren't just talking about the plot of the book.
Yeah.
What do you think makes interesting content for them?
Like I said before, what parts of you are in the book? What is it that sparked this book idea? How did it come to life? Are you doing something else on the side as well? What is it that is in the book that might be relevant to today? Or, is it like a PTA mom type of thing? What is it in your life that you relied on for that information? What kind of research did you do? All of those are great different topics. We want to get to know you. So I think it's really interesting when, like yesterday, I was onboarding an author who has a romantasy book and there's a spice scene in it. And I said to her, well, spice, like how does that work? Because you're very reserved, and that's become a topic of how do you write a spice scene for a romantasy when you are a more reserved person. something like that is a topic that you can speak on that people are interested in. So sometimes talking it out, whether it's, with a publicist, with a friend, write it out, ask yourself these questions, and it'll spark some ideas.
Speaking of spice, for those who don't know, we mean sexual content. Uh, some people are asking if they write under a pen name, they want some privacy, or they want privacy for any reason.
Mhm.
Is that a big drawback? If they don't want to be on video, they don't want a real headshot. Is that a big hindrance to getting booked?
Um, I've had authors who have pen names. I have never had somebody not want their headshot, released with it. Um, you probably need to have something headshot wise, whether it's even like a graphic or not an emoji, but something like that where it's kind of you, but it's cartoonized, something that can be promoted, because again, we're interviewing the author, so we want to promote the person. When it comes to video, a lot of shows are doing video. It's not that they all release the entire interview as a video, but they're pulling clips for social media from it. So I know that was another question on how to get camera ready. You should always be camera ready no matter what, because even if a clip is being pulled, that's going to go up on social media. So that's a good question that I have not had an author under a pen name say, don't use my photo. Yeah, that's a tough one, because is it on your book cover? Are you not putting a photo there? Because these are things that are normally happening. So, I would say make the pen name okay to use, and try to be okay with your headshot being used if possible.
Mhm. Diane says, I have a headshot from behind in a hat. I mean,
There you go.
anything
Yeah,
can.
incognito. Yes.
I know of authors who write under their real name and a pen name for two different things, and they're in the photos, but the hair is they do a photo session where their hair and everything is kind of just different, and you can't really tell.
Yeah, I love that.
Um, a few questions about the costs of publicist services and the pod chaser that you mentioned. There are publicity things that cost 30 grand and some that are 500. What kind of money ballpark are we
Sure.
talking about?
So Podchaser is over $3,000 a year for a subscription. That's for one person. So if you have a team or you want to share, it's even more. When it comes to podcast PR, I can tell you that my services for a podcast book tour is 6,250, and that is a guaranteed 15 interviews. It doesn't guarantee size or sort of specific shows, because that's out of a publicist's control. But 6,250 will get you the media kit, the speaking topics. I create everything that I just talked about for you, and you simply click on the calendar link and show up for the interviews, and then repurpose, share it at the end. Um, Anywhere from 2,000 a month to I've seen 10,000 a month for a publicist. And there's usually a retainer, like a certain length of time of 3 to 6 months that you need to sign up with that retainer.
Mhm. Um, I think we've covered a lot. One little question: when you are interviewing an author, do you give them the questions in advance, or do you prefer it to be totally spontaneous?
I do not. That's one of the reasons why I read the entire book beforehand. I like it to be conversational. So there's nothing pre-planned in my head. I just make sure that I have done my research, that I know who I'm talking to, that I know what the book is about. And then literally whatever pops in my head, I hope that that's exactly what's popping into the head of my listeners. And that's what I ask. And I always say no spoilers. We don't do spoilers when it comes to the book. So although I've read it, I make sure that I don't reveal what happens at the end, but I will say, oh, I cried here, here, and here. And the author usually knows why I cried or whatnot.
Mhm. Yeah, so I mean, I personally do not listen to a lot of podcasts, but I would say we say interview, but it's not so much of a traditional interview, right? It's like a
It's a
conversation being
conversation.
had.
Yeah. And that's why I think it's so important. A lot of authors are quote unquote introverts and they don't want to show up, on a big stage or something. And so that's the beauty of a podcast. It's literally you and me having this conversation as we are on a Zoom or a different platform. And so it doesn't have to feel like you're on a big stage. You can be in the comfort of your own home, that's where you and I are right now. And so it's easy. It becomes something that's more natural and not with a microphone right in front of you, in front of 500 people, that type of a thing.
Mhm. And finally, is there any way to really track the, return on your efforts, or you just looking for, the book data
It's
afterward, guessing?
Yeah, you can look at the book data afterwards, once it's gone live. I mean, I always like to run over to Amazon and see, oh, does it say that it's running out of stock or something? Then I
Refresh,
know,
refresh, refresh.
yeah, there's a correlation there. You can always, like I mentioned about giving away freebies, you can create a bit.ly link that is specific for every show you're on, and then see how many times that gets clicked. So that would be a way that you can track it for yourself. It's a little bit more work and effort, but if you really want to see, what the impact is, that's one way that you can do it. I always find that when I have an interview go live of myself, that people will reach out. I will see, people subscribing to my Substack. I will see the Amazon numbers go up. So you can get a sense and a feel for it that they do work.
Mhm. Wonderful. All right. Well, this has been lovely. Michelle Glogovac, thank you for being here today. Thanks for answering so many questions. Michelle, again,
Thank you,
thank you.
Johnny.
Thanks to the
Thank
audience.
you.
All right. Best of luck. Take care.